attachment binds us to this material body, which means if we consider ourselves to be this material body, that means I'm thinking that I'm matter, you see. So when this body dies, I take another material form to continue with my idea that I am matter. I get my next body according to my karma. If I live in a very pious way, I can be elevated to higher planets, or be a very wealthy, prestigious person on this planet, if I live very piously, you see. If I live very impiously, I can become a worm in the stool of my next birth, you see. But beyond this attachment, there's another platform, and that's affection. If we can learn how to take our tendency to be affectionate and spiritualize it, by connecting it with the supreme object of affection, the supreme person who's the source of all existence, Bhagavad Gita, then we become liberated, you see. So the key is you have to learn how to utilize your feelings, your emotions, your thoughts in a way that liberates you and doesn't entangle you. You see, that's the key. Put on the garland now. So that's the Bhakti Yoga system. In the Bhakti Yoga system, we teach you how to utilize your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, etc., in such a way that you become liberated, you don't become entangled. It's very important we understand these distinctions, because at every moment we're thinking, feeling, willing, and acting. It's our natural propensity. Yeah. So we don't want to, just like the garland shouldn't be put on backwards, we don't want our thinking to be on backwards either, you see. We have to learn how to think. Thinking is a natural thing. Now there's a certain class of philosophers who say, well, you have to just turn off your mind. Even the Beatles had a song like that when I was back in the 60s. They had a song called Tomorrow Never Knows. Turn off your mind, relax and float downstream. Is it glowing? Is it glowing? That was a big hit, I remember. The Beatles, you know. They had some sitar and all kinds of sound effects. But actually that's called voidistic philosophy. There is a class of philosophers who practice voidism, but it's not a very practical system, you see. In other words, according to voidistic philosophy, I don't really exist. I'm just an illusion. Well, whose illusion am I? How can I think that I exist if I'm not there to think that I exist? You see what I'm saying? So this idea of voidistic philosophy is not very practical. That's one, they say everything is zero. You see, that's one philosophy. Now there's another philosophy, everything is one. I am you. And the Beatles also had that in a song too. I am you as you or me, as we are he, and we are all together. I am the walrus, goo goo gajoob. That was another Beatles song called monistic. There's voidistic philosophy and monistic philosophy. Everything is one. I am you, I am God, you're God, we're all God. And that's what I was first exposed to when I looked into, growing up as a Christian, there wasn't really any philosophy of transcending material existence. I was simply taught to pray to have a nice material existence, and it didn't really turn me on. I lost interest by the time I got to college, and going to church didn't make any sense. I wanted to know, as a college kid, what is the purpose of my existence? They didn't teach me in church. My parents didn't taught me. They didn't teach me, and none of our university classes. We were studying. We had a series of courses over 4 semesters called Basic Studies. Of course, that was the joke of the students: BS 101, BS 102. Yeah, we're going for BS today. Bullstool. But we studied all the great philosophers, starting with the Greeks, the Romans, the Marcus Aurelius. We went to the medieval philosophers. We went to Heidegger, the Germans. We studied all these philosophers, but nothing really told me what is the purpose of existence? Why do I exist, you see? So it was very much of a mystery. But then I found about these Indian gurus. They had a whole different take on things. And I went to hear somebody said, I'm God, you're God, and we're all God. Well, that sounded pretty good. Wow, I'm God. Wow, great. Well, but after a couple of days, it's pretty obvious, when things weren't going my way. Well, it doesn't work either. Well, what to do? You see, what to do? How am I going to get out of this quagmire, I signed up for Paramahamsa Yogananda's self-realization fellowship, and he had me staring at a candle in a darkened room, sitting and staring at a candle. That didn't work. I went to Maharishi Maharaj Yogi. I had to pay money to get initiated. We don't charge money for initiation, by the way. We're not a rip-off organization. Initiation is given as a gift of love. The Guru gives initiation as a gift of love to the disciple. And the disciple wants to give a gift of love in exchange. That's his prerogative. He can do that. It's called Guru Dakshina. But for a Guru to charge a fee as a businessman, it's bogus. It's against the Vaishnava, against the whole culture of Guru-disciple given in the Vedic scriptures of India. So I paid my student discount fee, which was a lot of money in those days. $35 was a lot for a student back in the 60s. Much more valuable than $35 today. And I got my mantra, ang, ang, ang. So I was anging, 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 but didn't get any lift off. It's like an airplane, going down the runway, ang, 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 waiting for the lift off, ang, 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 speeding up, ang, ang, but no lift off, you see. Meditation means you lift off. A real meditation will lift you off the material plane and take you into the spiritual sky. You'll feel how you're taking off into the spiritual sky if there's a real technique in meditation. So that didn't work. So I got ripped off by Swami Satchidananda, ripped off by Paramahamsa Yogananda, I got ripped off by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, and what to do now, you see. So what to do? I didn't know how I was going to become self-realized. I heard there was something called self-realization. I really wanted to become self-realized, but how do I get it? You see. Well, it's an interesting story. It'll be coming out in my teaching memoir called Deliver Your Mind, Deliver the World. Try to finish it by the end of the year. That's my goal. My up-and-coming teaching memoir, Deliver Your Mind, Deliver the World. So anyway, I had a friend of mine named Patrick. I was living in Denver. I was working. I had a part-time job, and I was taking some university course also, I think, at the time. So I went to my friend Patrick's house, and he wasn't home. I looked up to him like he was, because he talked about how you go to the forest and become self-realized. So I looked up to this guy, that he must know something, how you can go and meditate in the forest and achieve self-realization. So I was very attracted to this guy named Patrick Dolan. So I went to his apartment. His roommate said, he went to Joe's place. So I went over to Joe's place, and they'd all taken LSD. Patrick and Joe and Patrick's girlfriend, Joe's girlfriend, a whole bunch of people, they'd all taken LSD. They said, why don't you take LSD? He said, no, thank you. I have so many bad trips already. Forget it. No LSD for me. I'm just going to go home and go to bed, And a few minutes later, there was this impassioned but very quiet knock on my door, like not loud, but very impassioned knock. And it was Patrick and all the crew, minus Joe. They said, don't turn the light, don't turn the light. Joe flipped out, he took all his clothes off, he took all his 33 and a third albums, he was smashing them against the wall, and then he ran out into the street naked. He was smashing his fists in the car windshields, going door to door saying, knocking on the door saying, there's LSD in the water, can you give me a drink of water? They were terrified because they knew the police were going to come. They were high on LSD and they were terrified. They didn't want to get caught with Joe. So they came to hide out at my apartment. They woke me up. And then my friend Patrick said, everybody chant this, it will protect him. And he went, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. And I went, wow, this is the guy I really looked up to, and he's chanting this mantra, Hare Krishna. So the next day I went over to his apartment and said, what is this Hare Krishna? And he showed me an article from the Saturday Evening Post, a big popular magazine in the U.S. in those days, very big magazine, which had covered what was called the Summer of Love in Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco, when all the hippies lived in Golden Gate Park and Haight-Ashbury neighborhood. And it mentioned about this Swami, Bhaktivedanta, had this mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. The Swami said how that would give all protection if you chant this mantra. So I was going, wow, that's pretty good. So I went to a gift store. I found this beautiful poster of Radha and Krishna, and I made an altar. And I got a Gita, not Prabhupada's Gita, but a Gita with no purports. It said, if you offer me your foods with love, a leaf, a flower, food, or water with love and devotion, I'll accept it. So I went, wow. So I had a vegetarian diet, and I had this beautiful poster of Radha and Krishna, and I would offer my food to them, and I would chant Hare Krishna. And I was feeling, wow, like taking off on an airplane beyond material existence. I didn't even meet the devotees yet. I hadn't even gotten Prabhupada's books yet. But just by the mantra and a few words, from about the Swami, in Bhaktivedanta Swami, and it's like, wow. I said, okay, that's it. I'm dropping out of the material world. I'm going to go to India and become a renunciate. That's my career path. Forget job, forget education. Just go to India, be a renunciate. That was my plan. Be a holy man in India. That was my career choice, you see. So I went back and there's a couple of hippie girls I knew that they also wanted to go to India. So we were going to all meet in New York and then get a job on a freighter, to get a free passage to India by working on a freighter. So I wanted to go now for my last, I didn't tell my parents my plan, of course, but I went home for one last Christmas, before I renounce the world and go to India. One last Christmas, right? So there's a philosophy in India called neti, where you deny not this, you deny everything. So I was actually on that path of denying everything material. Deny this, no, deny career, deny my U.S. upbringing, just deny everything of the material world. Deny, cut. In India, it's called neti. It's actually a traditional philosophical path. Deny. So one night I had a very profound realization sitting there in my parents' house in Houston, Texas, before I headed out for India. I had this very profound realization. And I wrote it down on a piece of paper. It was so profound. And here's the exact words I wrote down. I denied and I denied until I could deny no longer, and then I had to start accepting. In other words, if you deny everything, denial is also part of everything, isn't it? If you're going to be perfect in denial, you have to deny denial also. You see? So I had that, Krishna blessed me with that realization to go beyond the Mayavadi philosophy. I had that realization. If you're going to deny everything, you have to deny denial also. And you have to accept something transcendental. I had that realization. So then I felt I was being called to San Francisco. There were some great souls in San Francisco who were calling me to join them in a spiritual revolution. So instead of heading out to New York, instead of hitchhiking to New York, I hitchhiked to California. You see. I went into that famous neighborhood of the hippies, Haight-Ashbury neighborhood. I went into that Golden Gate Park, the famous place where the hippies would hang out, and there was the Hare Krishna Harinam party. They'd invited me to their temple, and I went with them to the temple. But I was still polluted by this idea that I'm God, you're God, we're all God. So I was chanting Hare Krishna in the temple room. One brahmachari says, "Oh, you're chanting so nicely." And I was thinking, ha ha ha, if she only knew that I am Krishna. So I wasn't ready to surrender to Krishna. But I thought, these people are kind of cool, but I mean, no girlfriends? Brahmachari, celibates. Said, I wasn't ready for that kind of a lifestyle. No girlfriends? Cutting out, we had long hippie hair and the whole, shaved head. No hippie hair, no hippie long beard, and no girlfriend. Well, I thought they were cool because they chanted Hare Krishna, but they weren't for me. That's it. So on my own, I tried this whole idea of the spiritual revolution by writing 300 songs and singing them, going over to also to cross the bay to the Berkeley campus and singing there on Sproul Plaza. And I even sang. I even shared the stage with some famous bands of the day, the Grateful Dead and the Jefferson Airplane. The crowd loved my sound, but it just wasn't working. Finally, I decided, and then there was a big, what was supposed to be the West Coast Woodstock. The Woodstock Festival is famous for Love and Peace Festival. So now there's going to be a year after the Woodstock Festival in New York, there's going to be the West Coast version of the Woodstock Festival at Altamont Racetrack. But it turned out to be a horrible nightmare. Somebody got murdered there. Just horrible nightmare. So I decided to leave the West Coast and go back to Austin. There I became a sensation on the campus with my singing on the George Washington statue every day. But still, I was searching. I had the idea of through this music I could make a spiritual revolution, but it wasn't clear, it wasn't clarified. But then I went home. I went home for Christmas. My parents visited my grandparents. My grandmother Bridge was a very, very pious lady, very, very pious. She would go and tell Bible stories to the derelicts. She would drive all the way from the countryside. She lived on a farm all the way into downtown St. Louis to where there was a derelict center, and she would tell Bible stories to the derelicts. They didn't have computers in those days. She used what's called flannel graph. She would create scenes on all these Bible scenes. She would create a scene with the flannel graph on a big board and tell the story. She was an expert storyteller. So she sat me down and told me the story of this. When Joseph was sold by his brothers into slavery in Egypt, became the prime minister of Egypt by God's arrangement. From being a slave to becoming the prime minister. Amazing story of how he had faith in God and God protected him even though he was sold as a slave by his brothers and sold to slavery in Egypt. He became the prime minister, the advisor to the king. So it was very touching, actually, her faith in God and how she preached to me, you see. So then I went back to Austin after the Christmas break and my mom and I went grocery shopping one morning down at the Weingarten's grocery store, and one boy approached us in the produce department. His name was Frank McIntyre. Little did I know he had been a Hare Krishna devotee who left the movement. He was Nityananda Das, but he left the movement, became a Mormon. He was really into Mormonism. So he invited me to his Mormon Bible study every morning. So he would pick me up in the car about 7:30 in the morning and take me to his house, and we would study the Bible together. So I got into this habit. I went back to Austin for my music stamping grounds, and I got into this habit of studying the Bible every morning. I didn't have a job. I would just stay with my music friends. Somebody put me up for a few days in one place. I didn't have money. I just played the guitar and wherever people would put me up. A hippie life, you see. So I got into this habit of studying the scripture. So I was trying to figure out what made Jesus Christ a self-realized soul, you see. I could understand he was what was his secret? What made Jesus a self-realized soul so I can also become self-realized? And one day, eureka, I found it. He said, Father, not my will, but thy will be done. Yeah, that's it. You just got to do what God wants. Forget what you want. Do what God wants, and you become a self-realized soul. Ki jai. But I had one problem. I didn't know what God wanted me to do. I was waiting. In the Bible, there was one great person. His name was Saul. On his way to Damascus, God revealed to him, this is your mission. I'm now renaming you as Paul, and here is your mission. I was waiting for my Damascus experience that God would speak to the little girl in the audience. My God. But there's an amazing thing. That little girl read in my mind that I was depressed. She was the only one in the audience. Can you imagine that? She's an amazing little girl. I wish I could meet her again someday and thank her, because you know what she told me? She said, don't worry, God can hear you. I went, wow. I thought about that, you know. Here I am waiting. I can't hear God. I want to, but I can't hear Him. But He can hear me. Wow. So now I had a new mantra. I said, every morning I would study the Bible and say, Dear God, please guide me how I can become your perfect servant. That was my new mantra. So guess what happened a few days after that? Vishnu Jan Swami shows up in town. And I was staying with my friend, one of my music fans named Mike Bridges, and his friend Margaret, who lived just down the street. She said, oh, there's a Hare Krishna Swami in town. He's going to be at my apartment in 1 hour. So where was I 1 hour later? I was there to meet that Swami. And he said, we're having a love feast today in Pease Park. So I was there, and actually I have a photograph of that, of him sitting in Pease Park. It'll be in my autobiography when it comes out. You can see the photograph. So by associating with this Vishnu Jan Swami, who was very, very dear to Srila Prabhupada, a very empowered preacher. Actually, his chanting was so amazing. You know what Prabhupada said about his chanting? He said, when I heard your kirtan in Los Angeles, I felt how I was being carried to the spiritual world, Vaikuntha. His kirtan was so amazing that Prabhupada himself felt he was carried to the spiritual world by his kirtan. So I was hearing his kirtans, and wow, were they amazing. You know, we have this ceremony here, Mangal Arti, in the morning. So he would offer Mangal Arti, but no one knew how to sing, and no one knew how to offer the Arti. So he would offer the Arti and sing. And it was so beautiful. Samsaradava nalalira loka Tranayakar yunyaganagadadvam Praptoshakalyana gunarnavasya Vande Goroshi Charanadavindam. Just by hearing it was mystical. The way he would sing was so beautiful and so amazing. So anyways, living as a hippie singer-songwriter, staying here and staying there, it gets kind of difficult sometimes. But the devotees invited me to move into the temples. So I came with my 300 songs and my guitar and moved into the temple. And I threw my 300 songs in the garbage can. From now on, only Krishna-conscious songs will I write, you see. So they'd say, you should surrender, become initiated disciple. Nope. I just, George Harrison had come out with My Sweet Lord. I'll just write Krishna-conscious songs, and that way I'll be Krishna-conscious, I was thinking. Not one of those brahmacharis, shave their head. No way, Actually, I had shaved my head as a cool thing, but I didn't want to surrender. It was a new cool haircut, the Sika and the lung. Actually, a friend of mine who wasn't a devotee had also gotten the Hare Krishna haircut, so he thought it was really cool. So I had a Hare Krishna haircut, but I wasn't about to surrender. No way. Anyway, my service was to vacuum the temple room rug every morning. So I was vacuuming away, and an amazing thing happened. We were out chanting on the street one day, the Hare Nams and Kirtan we do, and some DJ from a radio station comes up and he hands us a record album. He says, here, take this. You guys might like this. It was called the Radha Krishna Temple album, just released by Apple Records. George Harrison. He thought it was too spiritual, his radio station. And wow, just like we play it every morning, Govindam, that's the first cut on the album. It was a brand new release. And wow, we had a record player in the temple room. So while I was vacuuming the rug, we'd be playing the record, So I remember one morning I was vacuuming the rug, and the second cut on the album came. Samsaradava nalalita loka Tranaya karyunya guna gunadvam praptasya kalyana gunarnavasya vande kuroshi chadanada vindam. I was hearing that. I was going, wow. I was tuning in. This is the devotees in London were singing it. It was so much love. I'd heard so many songs. I'd written songs, I'd heard songs, but I'd never experienced a song that had so much love in it. It was amazing. That you could just feel, by tuning into the devotees singing, you could feel, get a little taste of that love they were feeling for Prabhupada, their spiritual master. It was so powerful that I was just thinking that, wow, I'm going to give myself to Prabhupada. That was it. When I realized the love what they were tasting by giving themselves to the spiritual master. I was licking the outside of the honey jar, trying to get some honey, right? Their tongues were in the honey. I realized they're getting the honey, and I'm just licking the outside of the jar right now. So I'm being, an envious person by nature, right? We're all envious, isn't it? That's why we're here in the material world. But I was envious of the love that they felt for Prabhupada. There's only one thing you can do, and that's to surrender and become a disciple also. So that's it. So I said, when can I get initiated? After that, hearing that. And so then we went to, a wonderful thing was happening. It was called the Ratha Yatra in San Francisco. Prabhupada was coming. Oh, wow, we get to go and meet Prabhupada. So we drove all the way to California, and two of the boys, Gary and Jim, they were getting initiated. But I'd only been chanting 16 rounds for 4 months, so I couldn't get initiated, or 5 months. So 6 months was the rule, and I couldn't get initiated. Oh, I was so afraid. They said, Prabhupada's an old man, he can die at any time. I was so scared that Prabhupada would leave the world and I wouldn't be able to become his disciple. I was actually crying. That night of the yajna, I was wandering in the hallway, crying, weeping that I couldn't get initiated. But then a month later, in August, Prabhupada was in London now, and Vishnujan Swami recommended myself and two other boys who also joined later, Chris and a hippie named Ron the Bead Man was his hippie name. And so he sent a letter to London recommending the three of us. We got a letter back. Prabhupada accepted us as his disciples. It was so wonderful. Wow. And then we had Vishnujan Swami did the yajna. And then the amazing thing happened. At that, Vishnujan Swami had been ordered to open 10 temples. So he after opening Austin, he went down to try San Antonio, which is 90 miles to the south, a big city. So another boy had come who had been in London when with the Beatles and the Beatles had become attractive. So he was our temple president, Ishan Prabhu, with his wife Babavati and their daughter Brajadevi. So he had the experience of the Beatles being attracted. So he thought, let's invite the mayor. If we can get the Beatles to come to the temple, certainly the mayor could come. So he wrote a letter to the mayor of Austin, inviting him to come to my initiation ceremony, and the mayor showed up. My father came up, and he was really impressed. He was sitting there talking with the mayor of Austin at my initiation ceremony. And really impressive for my dad. Wow, the mayor is coming. It must be really an important thing. The mayor is coming to attend this initiation ceremony. So one of the customs when you get initiated is to do dakshina. You give some dakshina. So I didn't have any money personally, but I collected some money from people at the yajna, my dad and a couple other people. And I sent those checks off to London, to Prabhupada. I told Prabhupada I want to spread this movement. I showed my enthusiasm for spreading the movement. I got the most wonderful letter back from Prabhupada. Oh, it was so wonderful. He gave me the exact amount of the 3 checks, like an accountant, like a pucka accountant. I've received these 3 checks. He gave me the exact amount to make sure that all the money was accounted for. And then he gave me the most wonderful blessing that has been sustaining me for decades. He said, I can see, this is his kindness upon me, I can see you're a very sincere and enthusiastic boy, eager for spreading this Krishna consciousness movement. Then he gave me a blessing. He said, now continue enthusiastically as you were doing, and surely Krishna will bless you. You know what? Those words have come true. The fact that I have so many disciples here in Melbourne is Prabhupada's blessing, you see. Krishna's blessing, Prabhupada's blessing. I have so many disciples all over the world because I stuck to Prabhupada's order to always be enthusiastic, you see, in all situations. As a brahmachari, as a married person, in every situation, I've always had that enthusiasm. Even when I was working a job for a few years, I did work in the corporate world for 3 years, a regular corporate job for 3 years. That was it. I retired after that, but I did my stint for 3 years as a computer programmer at Chilton Corporation. But they put me on the night shift. You go to bed, you go to work at 10 o'clock at night, and you get off at, I think it was something like 10 till 8. Now, I'd always gone to Mangalarti, which is every morning at 4:30. Now, all of a sudden, oh my God, I'd gone to Mangalarti every day for decades. And now, all of a sudden, you have a job from 10 at night till 8 in the morning. Oh my goodness. Oh, Krishna, what am I going to do? I can't go to Mangalarti. But then my boss said, nobody likes this night shift, so we don't mind if you take an extra long lunch break. So at 4 o'clock, I'd head out on my lunch break to the temple. I'd go to Mangalarti and come back after Mangalarti, you see. So it was a little over an hour, but they didn't mind, even an hour and a half, they don't mind. And no one likes to work that night shift. And then I'd get off work at 8 a.m., I can catch the last few minutes of Bhagavatam class. So I go to, even those 2 years, I went to Mangalarti every day, or 3 years, whatever it was. So in this way, I've maintained my enthusiasm, and Krishna blessed me with a very, very Krishna conscious wife, who's always helping me to be more and more Krishna conscious, you see. So this guru, they call her Guru Mata because she's so advanced in Krishna consciousness. Guru Mataji ki jai. Chicken egg. So in this way, you see, my life has been very much blessed, and you also, if you have this same enthusiasm to be a pure devotee of Krishna and to spread Krishna consciousness, I guarantee you your life will become, just as my life has become unlimitedly sublime, your life will also become unlimitedly sublime. You just have to embrace pure devotional service as your only business. It's being a perfect Christian also. Father, not my will, but thy will be done. If you're from a Christian background, now you become a perfect Christian. If you're from a Hindu background, now you become a perfect Hindu. If you're a Buddhist, become a perfect Buddhist. If you're a Jew, a perfect Jew. If you're a Sikh, whatever your religious background is, now you can perfect it, you see. This is the perfection of religion. Raja vidya raja guyam paviddam idamuttamam tatshakshavagamarm damyam shushukam kartamavyayam. This knowledge is the king of education. It's the most secret of all secrets. It's the purest knowledge. And because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it is the perfection of religion, and it is super ecstatically performed 24/7. So, don't cheat yourself, ladies and gentlemen. Bless yourself unlimitedly by surrendering fully to Krishna according to Krishna's orders given in the Bhagavad Gita. Take your Gita, read it, follow it strictly. If you're not sure, just do it as an experiment. For 6 months, that's what I did. I was thinking, well, I'll try this for 6 months. It didn't take long for it to convince me, you see. Just try it for 6 months. I'm going to try this process. I'm going to chant on the beads. I'm going to offer my food. I'm going to give up marijuana and liquor, any bad habits. For 6 months, I'm just going to try. I'm not going to have sex except for producing a baby and my wife. I'm going to be strict in my principles for 6 months. It's an experiment and see what happens to my consciousness. I guarantee you, if you do that, you'll enter into the most sublime state of spiritual bliss that you won't ever want to come out of it ever again. You see, you will taste it. You see, Prabhupada always says the proof of the pudding is in the eating. You see, so we don't believe in blind faith here. Blind faith isn't cool. We don't believe in blind faith. Blind faith, get out of here. You see, we give you experience. We give you the taste of transcendental existence. So you know what it is, you can taste it, you can feel it. You see, that's what we do in this Krishna consciousness process, you see. We teach you how to experience transcendental bliss beyond even the greatest happiness that the demigods can experience in the heavenly planets. That's what we teach you how to do. And if you follow our instructions, you can be bliss and heavy every day. Bliss and heavy every day, if you follow our instructions. So does anybody have any questions? Yes?
How to improve chanting? How to improve chanting?
The way to improve your chanting is you have to understand what is the actual meaning of the chanting. Don't chant mechanically. You have to understand chanting is you're begging Krishna to engage you in his pure devotional service. You're actually, the beauty of this thing is that Supreme Person is the source of all existence. God himself